Okay, good evening, everybody. I take the liberty of a personal privilege, and I want to dedicate this year tonight to a refuah shlema to a Chayal Boded who was born and grew up in our community in Toronto, in the Bayit community of Toronto, and I'm going to take the liberty of saying a kapitel Tilim, a Mishaberach, reading something to you from him. Many of you have, everybody has seen that last week a Chayal Boded was severely injured in the north by Hezbollah, and he is now in the neurosurgery ward in Rambam Hospital in Haifa. And in Mirz Hashem, he will have a refuah and a Yeshua, a refuah shlema. Benjamin Brown, who's the son of Jeffrey and Annette Brown. Jeffrey is a past president of the shul. Jeffrey, the children were very young when we made Aliyah, so I only knew them as little children. But when I come in contact with them here in Eretz Yisrael, they're very loving, very special, and they have to be very special. They're B'nai Yeshiva, Benji and Zach, a Ben Yeshiva, a Hesder Yeshiva, and also a Chayal Kadosh, fighting in Tzal, and Rabbi Karapkin, who certainly knows them much better, tells me that Benji is just a superstar. He's a focused individual thinker, someone very special and passionate in everything he does, in his Yiddishkeit, in his chesed. So let's just do I want to just say a kapitel Tilim and a Mishaberach, and then I'll read something that he wrote for you before we go into the shir, because I am dedicating the shir for a refuah shlema to Binyamin Ber Ben Chana, L'kol Cholei Yisrael. Shir Amalos Esaena El Ahorim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz, al yitain lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael, Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha, yomam hashemesh lo yakecha, v'yarech b'layla, Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmor et seischa v'uecha mi'ata v'yad olam. I've often pointed out that in this kapitel of Tehillim, we say, Esa'ena el horim me'ayin yavo ezri. Look up to the mountains to see where our help comes from Hashem. So the question is, why doesn't David Melech Yisrael say, look up to the Shamayim, look up to the Shemesh, v'yareach, v'kochavim? Why look up to the Harim to see the help that is coming from Hashem? So I think the pshat, the understanding, what David HaMelech had in mind was that the difference between Harim, a mountain, a har, and the Shemesh and the Yareach is that a mountain is climbable. We can climb the mountain. And David is telling us a tremendous lesson on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we want HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help, it's a two-way street, that we have to reach up towards him, we have to move in his direction, and he will move in our direction. Very fitting for Benjamin. Let me do the Mishaberach. Mishaberach Avosenu Avram Yitzchak V'Yakov V'Yavorech Es Binyamin Ber Ben Chana Ba'avur Sha'allah Hu Yivorech V'Yarape Es Achola Binyamin Ber Ben Chana Ba'avur Shekulanu Yitnu Tzedakah B'li Neder Ba'avuro. B'schar zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimale Rachim Alav La'achlimo L'Raposo L'Achziko L'Achyoso Yishlach Lo Meheru Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim V'soch Shar Cholei Yisrael Refuas HaNefesh U'Refuas HaGuf Hashta Ba'agolav Izman Koriv V'Nomar Amen. I want to read you. Benjamin sends out every week to family and friends a Dvar Torah, and I want to read to you the Dvar Torah. Usually it is a video and a WhatsApp message, but Rabbi Karapkin transcribed it and read it out Friday night in the Bayit this past week, but it is from Parshat Balak. But I think you'll see why it has tremendous. First of all, you'll get a picture of this Chayal Kadosh, this very special Benjamin. Right now, we're at the end of the 40-year journey, faced with the unknown threat of Balak and Bilam. Their attitude was the Jews are not special. They're not going to mess up from now until the time of Mashiach. Why? We are going to mess up. Why? Choose only the Jews. Why not let everyone be the same? But what they failed to realize is that they thought that practicing Judaism was just a box to be checked, but that they could do whatever else they wanted with their lives once that box was checked. But really, that's seeing Judaism as a checklist. What it really is a lifestyle, a full-time life commitment. Even if you daven with the fervency of Yom Kippur, but if you make it mundane, something that I have to do, it loses its value. Bilam's last effort of the Parsha was to seduce the Jews. He just wanted the Jews to assimilate and make their Judaism a checklist also. He wanted them to continue bringing their korbanos, but to also party like the Midianites. How do we view our Judaism? Is it a checkbox or a lifestyle? Part of making Judaism a way of life is to work on oneself and go against the grain of one's nature. Avram prayed on behalf of the people of Sdom. He realized that he needed to work on himself. This is because Judaism is working on the self, facing our failures, and then realizing that even when we're in the mundane parts of life, we're still connected. Even when you close the sefer after learning, you're still connected to it because you've made it an intrinsic part of your life. In Parshas Balak, the Jews weren't even involved in the story of Bilam's attempt to curse us, but we were still connected to the story. That's because Judaism is our life, not a checkbox. Even when things seem distant and far, I'm still connected to Hashem. Now, here's the second last paragraph of this letter from which I bristled by reading it, because really it was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy for Binyamin at this moment. I might be a sefer that's kissed and closed right now, or I might have kissed and closed the sefer of Hashem right now for the time being. But even so, I'm still connected. So b'siyata d'shmaya, let us have a look into our inner world of our avodas Hashem and our Judaism and have it become more than just a checklist, but rather a lifestyle. L'chvod Shabbos, thank you so much for letting me in here. These words speak so much about this young man, this Chayal Kadosh, this Ben Yeshiva, and we hope and pray that he will have a refuah shlema bimheira and the schus of the Torah that we're learning now. Our weapons for refuah and Yeshua are Torah and tefillah. So let's learn a little bit on behalf of a refuah shlema for Binyamin. So the parsha of our parsha is Matos-Masei. It's a double parsha this week, and Matos begins with the dinim of nidarim, of vows, of religious vows. Now there are two kinds of vows. The word for a vow in Hebrew is neder, which is really not enough of an appropriate translation, but we translate the word neder as a vow. There are two kinds of nidarim. One is that we prohibit something of the Torah to ourselves, that the Torah allows us to do, we prohibit to ourselves. The other is that we take on we vow to take on an extra mitzvah in a big way. Now, there's a danger. There's a danger of nidarim, particularly prohibiting something to ourselves. Let's say that we don't want to do, we want to take on something extra, that it really becomes a kind of 614th mitzvah. And words have consequence. Speech can be useful and it can also be destructive. This is the power of speech, and this is what this first piece is about. This piece is from the Kanfei Yonah, which was my sefer on the Parsha in Ivrit, and it's called Koko Shel Manhig, the power of a manhig. Vaydaber Moshe El Roshei Matot Livnei Yisrael. Moshe spoke to the leaders of the tribes, the Matot Livnei Yisrael, to Bnei Yisrael. They more saying, Zeh davar asher tziva Hashem. This is the thing that God commands, and he goes on to explain the dinim, the laws of nidarim, of vows. בפסוק זה בולטת העובדה שהתורה מדגישה את מקומם של ראשי המטות בציווי זה. Parsha highlights the ראשי המטות, the leaders of the tribes, which is unusual. You don't generally see that in a mitzvah that is presented in the Torah. V'chein Rashi, Masev and Shumat Libno, Rashi says, Tzumat Libo, Rashi gives attention to this. Here's Rashi. Halak kavod lenesiim. Rashi tells us that the Torah, Moshe gave specific place and importance to the Nesiim, the princes of the tribes. Lilamdam chila, to teach them first. Afterwards, he taught all Bnei Israel. The truth be told is, this is true with all of the mitzvot of the Torah. Talmud lomar vayashuvu elav Aaron b'chol hanesiim ba'eda v'yidaber Moshe aleim. First, he gathered Aaron and the Nesiim. Moshe would gather Aaron and the Nesiim after he received the Torah. V'yidaber Moshe aleim, spoke to them. V'achrei zeh nikshu kol b'nei Yisrael. Then all b'nei Yisrael came. So this was the way the Torah was given. But the question is, umara lo amrokan. Why is this concept emphasizing the Nesiim, the Roshei Matot, the leaders, the princes of the tribe? Why is that emphasized dafka by nidarim, the mitzvah of making vows? Right? Why? Lamad shahafarat nidarim biyachid mumcha. This is to teach us that the ability to cancel a vow can even be done by a yachid, mumche, by an expert such as the prince of the tribe. One can go to a beit din of 3 rabbanim, 3 dayanim, or even to one expert like the head of a tribe. B'mein yachid mumche, if there's no yachid mumche, mefar b'shloshe hadyotot, you can take three Jews. Kilomar, din hafarat nedarim, the ability to cancel a vow, which we want to do because it's a dangerous business, mityaches ba'ofen ikroni lemanhigim, is given over particularly to the yachid mumke, to the leader. V'zot b'achra Torah lelamed otanu be'emtzaut hadgasha zu shel makomam shel nesiim. And that point is driven home by Moshe speaking specifically to the Nesiim and highlighting that, even though it's true by other mitzvot. Okay? If you don't have the sheets, I'm going to translate everything. I apologize, those of you who don't have the sheets. Amnam milvad zot, aside from that, mitzayein hagon Rav Nissen Alpert sheyeshnam od shtei ha'arot boltot b'mivnei pasuk. There are 2 other questions that we could ask on this pasuk, asked by Rav Nissen Alpert. Rav Nissen Alpert, who I've mentioned many times in past shiur, Rav Nissen Alpert was taken from this world much too young. He was the Talmud Muvak of Rav Moshe Feinstein and a Rosh Hashiva in Yeshiva University, a very special Talmud Chacham. And in his Sefer, Limudei Nasan, he asks another 2 questions on this pasuk. Reshit number 1, B'nigud l'nohog Torah b'derech klal, again, against the grain of what the Torah does normally. Parsha zu eino potechet b'milim vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. This Parsha of Nidarim doesn't begin with, and God spoke to Moshe. Ela matchila yeshirut b'teyur dvarav shel Moshe. It cuts to the chase, the words that Moshe spoke to us. Kemo ken yesh la'ayin b'kach she'atorah bachra lechanot et hanasiim. Question number 2 or number 3. He calls the Nesiim b'shem Roshei Hamatot. Now, Mateh is also a name for a leader, a tribe, right? A tribe is a Mateh. So they're called the Roshei Matot. Why does he call them the Roshei Matot, right? B'makom bitui Nesiei Ha'edah. Call them the princes of the congregation. or Roshei Yisrael, right? What's that all about? Mikocham shel shelot elu. Based on these questions, yesh lomar shemilvad etzem dineh shel mitzvot nedarim. I want to tell you, says Rav Nissen Alpert, and we're going to explain this, that Moshe's intent is not simply to give over the laws of vows. Bikesh Moshe Rabbeinu lahavir meser. He wanted to deliver a message miuchad l'nesiim, specifically to the leaders of the Jewish people. Shenaga l'nisayon hachayim ha'ishi shel Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom atzmo. Based on my life, Moshe Rabbeinu wants to present a valuable lesson to the leaders of the Jewish people, a lesson they have to learn the hard way that I had to learn that message. Let's see what he means. When Kodesh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe to speak to the rock, to bring forth water, Moshe made a mistake, fatal mistake. He assumed that the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted him to hit the rock, not to speak to it. I mean, there was precedent. The first time, that's what he did. Harashbam Masbir, the Rashbam explains, Shehisiba Sheta Moshe, the reason why he made a mistake, because he told him to take his staff, his scepter with him, right? Which is a symbol of leadership. But he told him to take the staff, right? What does he need the staff for, the scepter? Imlo to hit the rock. Which he commanded him to do the first time that he brought water out for Bnei Israel. Moshe understood the purpose of taking the staff, the mateh, ito, with him, mishum shamusag dibur kasher mityachim besela hakavan al haka. Speech with a rock is hitting it, right? Speech to a human being, maybe that's speaking, but to a rock, it's hitting it. So that's what he wanted to do. Over to page 2. Ulam lemaisa, but the truth be told, that's not what was going on here. That's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Lemaisa mateh lo nuad ella al menat lahochiach et bnei Yisrael. The mateh was designed, the staff, the mateh was designed to reprove Bnei Yisrael ulahachmish et ha'ovda shehaya ofen shebo bikshu et hamayim mishum meri. Right? It was not simply because of disobedience, Mary, on the part of the rock. So I'm going to punish you and hit you. V'lo al manat lahotzi mayim yinasel, not only to bring out water from the rock. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ratzah sheMoshe amnam yochiach et bnei Yisrael. He wanted to reprove the Jewish people. Acher hamayim yotzi b'koach dibur bilvad. That you can bring out water, even from water from a rock, even by using the power of speech. The power of speech is unending in what it can accomplish. It wasn't about bringing water from the rock only. It was from teaching the Jewish people that the power of speech can accomplish great things, right? Continues. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to show the people at mashmut koach hadibur shel adam, to show the power of speech to the people, we say. Ulharot, to demonstrate shelafamim nitan lishanot hametziut legamri be'emtzeut diburim bilvad, that one can change the order of nature with the power of speech, right? When you think things are hopeless in interpersonal relationships, sometimes the right word can make a complete turnabout. Lalo kol tzorach la'asot shimush b'masim, without action, without hitting, without physical force. Afilu hotzi mayim min hasel, even to bring water from a rock. This was the real lesson that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to bring from Moshe and the rock. Rayon zeh, the next paragraph, Amad b'merkos hameser, the message, Sheratzah Moshe Rabbeinu la'avir l'Roshei Matot, what he wanted to give over to the leaders of the tribe, the leaders, the Roshei Matot. Kasher hubo, if you're picking up here what's going on with the word mate and mate. Kasher hubo la'asok beParshat nedorim. He's dealing with the laws of vows, which is power of speech, which is abusing the power of speech. Shenyanu koach hadibor, it's the power of speech to make a vow, a religious vow, which can get us into trouble. And that's why in Yom Kippur, we begin Yom Kippur by nullifying our vows, by canceling them, right? Ukoach hadibur is the power of speech. Uratzah lachzor la'avir lehemet hashiur shahaya alav lahavir b'mkor b'mei mariva. This is what we're talking about. L'chein nemer b'parsha kaviyochel b'shmo shel Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, this whole thing is given over. Not vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. He's answering the first question. Skips that. Torah says Moshe, Vaydaber Moshe, because Moshe wants to take up close, and this is up close and personal. Look at what happened to me because I made a mistake, a fatal mistake, by hitting the rock, by not using the power of Dibur, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted me to do. So this is up close and personal. I want to teach you this message, right? It's about me. Shekain tuvna, zu also be'ikvus nisyono aishi. This was my personal test, which I failed at. And look at the results. I'm not able to come in to Eretz Yisrael, right? So what about this mate, right? Rayon ze b'makel, mikabel bitu yikam. We can drive this home. Bekach she'aTorah mishtameshet b'kavana b'shem. The second question, Roshei HaMatot, the leaders of the tribes. Shem zeh, the word mateh, nuad lahazkir lanu et hamateh. She'ito hika Moshe Rabbeinu alav hasholem et hasela. The word mateh has two meanings. Mateh means a scepter. It does. It means a scepter or a staff, but it also means a group of people, a tribe of people. Same word. Has two meanings in Lashon Kodesh, right? But hasela b'mkom shehishtamesh bekoach hadibur. It's the scepter that he used rather than speaking. And he's speaking to the Roshei HaMatot. You have the power both of mateh and mateh. The power of force, being a leader by force, right? Or the power of being a leader of people and responding to them b'dibur. Amnam hu mishamesh gam. The scepter also, mateh also, lehavarat etzem hameser shebikesh Moshe Rabbeinu lahachdir, to pervade Lamanhigei Shalai, that he wanted to teach the leaders, the Roshei HaMatot, that they are leaders of a mateh, but it's a double-edged sword, right? It's not just power, it's physical power, it's also speech. B'domeh lemila shevet, the word shevet for tribe. Shevet for tribe also. Gam lemila mateh is the same as mateh. Yeshno kafel mashma'ud ze'ah. The word shevet also means a scepter, a rod, a staff, and also means a tribe. So you have to decide, how do you want to treat the shevet, right? Gam lemilamata yeshno kefil mishmut mashmut zayah. It has these two different meanings in Lashon Kodesh. Dei milim hitarot kfutza shel anashim. Could mean a group of people. Both of them mean a group of people. Gam makel shel eitz. It could be a staff of wood. Hamakel mishamesh liitim lahaka. Sometimes it's used to strike physically. Kifi shanu roim bepasuk. You see it in the Torah. Ki yakeh ish avdo et amato b'shevet. Torah says when a person hits his eved, his friend, with a shevet, right? Umeis amnam gam mivta et ma'amado shel hamanig. But it also relates to the challenge, the responsibility of a leader. Obal hasamchut hamishtamesh bo al menat la'anish et elu she'enam sarim l'marato. He wants to punish people. Unklis mitargem et hamila shevet. Unklis translates shevet kultan, leadership, dominion, but it has to be done with chachma. Finally, Zehu HaMeser Sheratza Moshe Rabbeinu Lavir. This is the lesson that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to give over. Manig asui lachshov shahashevet or amata. A leader has to understand that his shevet or his mate, right? Oto makel hamishamesh liyaser et elu she'enu nishmaim bekolo, which is kind of a metaphor. You have the shevet makel, right? Mate, metaphor, dogma. It's a dogma of leadership, but it doesn't mean that's the. It's like a leader goes with a scepter, the king goes with a shevet, but that doesn't mean that it's to be used with physical force. Lashpia alam amnam parshat nedorim. Parshat Nedorim, which you leaders, I'm giving this over to you because Nedorim is all about the power of the word, right? V'chein hitnasuto shel Moshe b'mei Meriva, and my test, I'm putting up front my failed test at Mei Meriva with the hitting the rock, right? Was also with, I should have been with Dibur. Kasher ikvi, ekvi, if it's consistent. V'nishmar b'ne'amanut, a leader has to be consistent and constant. Misugal afhu l'shanot et hametziut, he can change the people he's leading. Ad kedei lahotzi mayim mitzor, to the point of even bringing water from a rock by using the shevet, by using the mata of speech. Manik tzarich ladat sheyesh lo koach atzum hatamun b'piv. A leader has to know. We all have to know. The power of speech is amazing. Ad kedei lahotzat mayim mitzor. Manik tzarich ladat sheyesh lo koach atzum hatamun b'piv. A leader has to know that he has tremendous power with the koach of dibur, of his speech, his teaching power, his speaking power. Im hu yodal ledaber benachat, if he knows to speak with nachat, with gentility, with gentleness, lishmor al motzei piv, lishtamesh bekoach dibur shelo b'tzura muschelet, to think, to speak with wisdom. So this is the idea of the mata, of the shevet, why this parsha of Nedarim, specifically to the leaders, why specifically for Moshe, because he wanted to highlight through his humility of Moshe, right? There was no anav like Moshe, through his own humility of demonstrating his own error with the power of speech, to teach us how to use our power of speech properly. Okay, over the page. Number 2 is from Rav Schwab, the Sefer Mein Beit HaShoeva, and just the point, he's going to talk about B'no Slavchad. We know the story of B'no Slavchad. They said to the Rabbanu, they said to Moshe, Zelo fair. Why are the men only getting an inheritance? The women aren't getting inheritance. So the law of inheritance was actually to women, was actually established and codified through B'no Slavchad, through the women, the daughters of Slavchad from Shevet Menashe, from Yosef, from Shevet Yosef, the daughters of Slavchad who came from Menashe and Yosef. It's interesting that we're coming to the end of Sefer Bamidbar, and the first 4 chumashim of Torah deal with the power of the miraculous. Moshe, miracles, right? Everything is tremendously min hashamayim, nisim gluyim, obvious miracles. There's a watershed moment now. At the end of Bamidbar, we're coming into Devarim, which is taking us into Eretz Yisrael, where the party of miracles is Moshe leaves. Moshe leaves, and with Moshe leaves that direct relationship to obvious miracles. And now it's not only Kodesh Baruch Hu coming to us, but it's the challenge of Bnei Yisrael on our own, building the land, building Eretz Yisrael, creating a just society, bringing the Kedusha of Torah through our own handiwork, reaching up to Hashem. That's what the Devarim comes to. There's a watershed moment here. So it's interesting that at the end of the Sefer, you have, first of all, last week, Pinchas taught us the law. It was the law of Kanoim Pogenbo, right? It was not given to us by Moshe himself. It was given by Pinchas. The law of Nachla, of inheritance, is coming from the daughters of Slavchad, from ourselves, because Torah, these are the first examples of Torah Shebal Peh. Until now, it was the written Torah of Moshe. And once we end off from these 4 Sforim and enter into Dvorim, we're entering into the stage of the oral Torah, which is something that the oral Torah is something that is created. It's given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it is fleshed out by Am Yisrael through our learning of Torah, which we see from Pinchas and the daughters of Slavchad. I maybe just want to add in a kind of PS here. I don't know if we're not going to get through everything here necessarily, but speaking about inheritance, there's a tremendous question to be asked, right? important as an obvious, there's the union of inheritance, giving over to our children. Children inherit from parents. Everyone does it, right? Children inherit from parents. But the Sefer HaChinuch, which discusses the laws of inheritance, and the laws of inheritance are many, there is no din in the Torah that a parent has to give over an inheritance to their child, right? Halo davaru. Why is that? Secondly, halachically speaking, the support that a parent has to give a child ends at the age of 6. That's the halacha. After 6 years old, a parent is not obligated to support a child. As incredulous as that sounds, that's the halacha. So number one, there's no din, there's no law that you have to give over an inheritance to child. Number two, after the age of 6, you don't have to, you can turn to society to help you to raise your children. Now that's an amazing set of questions, right? So how do we understand that? So I think the Torah is doing something which is amazing. You know, the Ostrovsky Rebbe, who was a great Hasidic Gaon, once wrote that the love that a parent has for a child is much stronger than the love that a child has for a parent. Now, we who have experienced both the love of a parent to a child and love from a child to a parent, if we're intellectually honest, we know it's true, right? A parent's love for a child, the unconditional love. A child, not so simple. Parent admonishes a child, he or she goes into the room, slams the door. I hate them, right? Now, eventually they cool down and they change their attitude, right? Doesn't happen with a parent unless there's some kind of illness involved, right? Why is that? Why is the love for a parent? In other words, I remember once a woman in the community many years ago who had a challenging relationship with her mother. She as at her own admission, she forget about terrible twos. She was a terrible teenager. She was terrible to her mother. Their relationship was very much at odds with each other. When she gave birth to her baby, and the doctor gave her the baby, and she was holding the baby, her daughter, she called her mother and could not stop crying, asking forgiveness to her mother at that moment. How could I have treated you the way I did? And please accept my apology, right? So the Ostrovsky says, why is it true? Why is it? It is. If we're intellectually honest, there is some truth to it. And he says like this, because it's a genetic thing. It's a genetic thing. We are from Adam and Chava, from Adam and Eve. We were created as we had children. We were created as parents to have children, right? That's genetically there, that we had children, right? But the children to be a parent, that was not part of the genetic makeup. The original genetic makeup of Adam and Chava was not as children. They were genetically parents, a mother and a father. That genetically is stronger than the genes of being a child to a parent, because it going all the way back to our origin, we were parents genetically, and children to parents came afterwards. It was not as strong a genetic pull. Genius. The Ostrovsky Rebbe was a genius. So based on that idea, I want to suggest to you that's the genius of the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's rachamim, what he's after here. I mean, why is there a mitzvah to honor parents? Parents give up children everything, their basic needs, right? Food, love, shelter, everything they need without being asked, right? So what's going on here, right? What parent would not provide for their children after 6? What parent would not provide something for their children after 120 years? The idea of the mitzvah of inheritance is for the children to appreciate, once they learn a little Torah and they see what the Torah says about inheritance and parents' responsibility to children on the books and everything, then they look at everything their parents are doing for them and have done for them, much the same as this woman in the maternity ward. They will appreciate and love their parents even more, not because they have to, but now they understand and they'll embrace the relationship and the love that their parents have given them, not because of a responsibility, as an obligation, as a mitzvah, but they embrace them as children because of love. Okay, let's do number 2 on the sheet, Benos Slavchad, and he brings out something. Rav Schwab says something very nice. Pasuk on Benos Slavchad. Zeh davar. Here's the halacha. Asher tziva Hashem livnot Slavchad. So he commands Benos Slavchad. Here's the pshar. Here's the rule. Leimor letov beineim tiyena lenashim ach lemishpachat. You're right. You said good, and this is what you can do. You can inherit, but please be careful, right? Tiyena lenashim ach lemishpachat. You can get married, right? Because the danger here is that their inheritance will go to another tribe, but they were allowed to get married, right? Siva Hashem livnot stavchad lemor letov beineim tiena. You can tiena lenashim. You can get married. Get married. You get an inheritance. Second part of the pasuk. The inheritance is yours. What will happen to it, we don't know. But then, however, lemishpachat mateh aviem tiena lenashim. But do yourself a favor and marry within the tribe, right? Because then there's going to be problems. The inheritance is going to go to outside the tribe. You don't necessarily want that to happen, but you can do it if you want, right? The mitzvah is you can get married to anyone you want, but second part of the pasuk, marry within the tribe. So let's see what Rav Schwab says. It's a Gemara in Bava Basra. V'no slavchad, hu truly nase lekol hashvatim she'amar letov be'eineim tien el hashim. The tribe, the women of Slavchad, the daughters of Slavchad were allowed to marry out of their own tribe of Menashe, right? Ella, so that's the first part of the Elamani Mekayim Achle Mishpachat Mate Aviem Tiel Nashim. So what do I accomplish with this last part of the puzzle? But marry within the tribe. Eitzah Tova, the Gemara said, it's a Gemara. Eitzah Tova, it's a Gemara in Bava Basra for those who are learning Daf Yomi, you'll get to it eventually. Right? Eitzah Tova Isiyan HaKatuv. It's a suggestion, a good suggestion that the Torah is giving. Shelo yinasu ela lahagon lam. Marry within. Ulefi zeh, you'll have less trouble, less problems, right? Ulefi zeh kasha masha amar apasuk kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe kein asu benot slavchad v'tiyena etzeret livnei didadei lanashim harei lo nitztavu linaseh livnei. They were never commanded to do this. What's going on here? They weren't commanded to do it. So what's the idea here? Amnam, second paragraph. Ha'inyin hu she'etzah tova shel Torah nechshevet beinei yirei shamayim ketzivu Hashem. A good idea in the Torah is considered to a God-fearing person, to an intelligent person, right, as a commandment, right? V'dun minei lekol Torah, and let's apply this to the whole Torah. Sha'af shebaharbe mitzvot yesh lahatira davar mipat etzem hamitzvah kedivrei Ramban yesh parshat kedoshim liot navel b'reshut Torah. A person, you do the mitzvahs, a person can do all the mitzvahs in the Torah, but he can be a very not nice person just by doing the mitzvahs. Not enough to do the mitzvahs, right? How do you do the mitzvahs? Mikol makom gam kavanat Torah, the kavana, the intention of how we do mitzvahs. It's part of the mitzvah. In Moshe Amar, as it says, and we say this every time we put away the Torah, Darcheha, Darchei Noam. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, the kol netivotea shalom, and all of its paths are peace. In other words, here's the thing: sheyesh derech haTorah shalom nitne b'loshen tzivui rak ke'etzah tova. Someone could say in tongue in cheek, well, it's not really 10 commandments, it's 10 suggestions. Not so. 613 commandments. But God does make suggestions to us. There are suggestions, and we should take them seriously. In other words, there is an ethic of Jewish behavior, of Torah behavior, that is above halacha. In fact, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, that's the great Rosh Hashiva Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, the son-in-law of Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein wrote a brilliant essay many years ago. Is there an ethic outside of halacha? And basically there is. Just to give an example from Rav Hutner, the other Rebbe of Rav Aaron Lichtenstein. Rav Hutner once said, trying to drive this home, there's divrei reshut and divrei chova. There are things that are non-negotiable, and there are suggestions. So, for example, he says, if I stand in the Beis Medrash and I have a beautiful white Persian cat with a diamond necklace, and I've got this cat, and I'm standing in my place in the front of the base medrash is Rosh Hashiva. Is that osir? Is it forbidden? It's not osir, but ein ruach chachamim nochai. Not a good idea. Not a good suggestion. There are certain things that are not necessarily the letter of the law, but we should try to take the suggestion that the Torah is giving. That's the idea here. And one more, we'll skip over to the second column. Actually, I think we're running out of time. I'll just do the second paragraph. Inyan zeh lamdu chazal. The rabbis teach us this. Here we have. I'll tell you this outside. We won't go inside, and I'll end with this. Yitro, something we've spoken about in the past. Yitro, the first ger, tzedek of the Jewish people, comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, a newly minted ger, and what does he do? He has the seeming temerity and presumptuousness to teach Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, you're working too hard. You're working much too hard, right? You're taking this business on your own, all by yourself. You shouldn't do this. You've got to, so he wants to reform the judicial process and tells him how to appoint judges of hundreds, judges of tens, judges of 50, and so on, right? Now, that's one thing he did, but it's even worse. He goes on and he tells him, Veit hamaisa asher ya'asun. He tells him the law of to go lifnim mishurat hadin, go beyond the letter of the law, which is uncanny. Here's Yisro, again, the newly minted ger. He comes and he tells them, you have to do not only what the Torah tells you to do, but you have to do beyond what the Torah tells you to do, beyond the letter of the law, right? And in fact, the Gemara says that Yerushalayim was destroyed because we didn't do beyond the letter of the law. We just went along. This is the halacha. I'll do the halacha. But what about my own feeling? What about my own emotion? What about my own heart and soul, putting it into the mitzvah? So Yisro taught him beyond the letter of the law. Now, by the way, that's a tremendous question. What chutzpah is it for Yisro to tell us that beyond the 613 mitzvahs? The answer is that Yisro was the only person alive at the time who could properly teach that concept, because Yisro was the first ger. Because a ger is a Jew by choice, not a Jew because I stood by Har Sinai, even though I said Nasav and Isma. I have no choice. Yisro was a Jew by choice. He accepted, he embraced Torah. He embraced the Torah as something beyond the letter of the law, right? So here you have this idea beyond the letter of the law, the kind of the 613 suggestions beyond the 613 mitzvot. Okay, there you have the Parsha. And I think that our young, wonderful young Chayalim and Bnei Yeshiva that we're all familiar with, many of our children, grandchildren, relatives, friends, they are fighting for us. There are two sets of hostages. There are the hostages, and there are the Chayalim who are also hostage to this evil enemy. And we want them both and all to come home very soon. And we want, in particular, the one Chayal Kadosh that we've been focusing on tonight to enjoy a refuah shlema b'toch kol cholei Yisrael.